Welcome back to another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you once again to talk the world of sports and wagering and have some fun with you. SJ, how'd the weekend treat you?
Yeah, not too bad. Got I guess a little bit of outdoor activities in. That thermometer is kind of being a little bit bipolar these days. So not just when you think kind of the summer is upon us, it go ahead and does something different. So that's kind of been a little bit of a thorn in my side lately. I just rather it stay the same. I mean, if it stays cold, stay cold, whatever. But yeah, I mean, overall decent weekend. Didn't do anything too exciting, but low key and chill. I can go for that some weekends.
Yeah, yeah, same for me. A little bit of the outdoor stuff. I had to miss the daughter's soccer game on Saturday morning for a work thing, and sounds like it was probably a good thing I did have to miss it because they were suffering in the wind and cold on Saturday morning, unfortunately. But it got a little bit better by the time later when I made it up there for the second game of the day. So. Yeah, it's finicky, but we're in the Midwest. We're used to that shit, and hopefully it'll turn around and get in the right direction here for us in a more permanent fashion. But we've had a few decent days here or there. But yeah, we'll hopefully enjoy more of that and get to talk some outdoor stuff. But
Yeah, your life's kind of going the other way, at least in my opinion. When I was a little bit happy for the rain for the yard, you're less like, oh, you're excited for the grass to get, you don't have to water it, and then
yeah,
that's when you're like, oh man, maybe I got to pick up a different hobby or something. But
yeah. Priorities change as you get older. That's for damn sure. Everybody will find that out if you're one of the younger crowd listening to this. So, but yeah, and we've had a few decent rains around here lately, so that's been very good. I'm sure the farmers also appreciate that. That's always the talk of the town. But as we get rolling, of course, we're always talking about what's wetting our whistle and not necessarily the lawns. We got to keep ourselves hydrated as well. SJ, what are you working on there today?
I actually went back to my friends in Oklahoma. Told you it was one of my favorite breweries down there, the Prairie Artisan Ales. I found this. What I hadn't tried. It kind of seems like they're left and right. They're kind of pumping them out there. It's called Watermelon Girlfriend. Of course, another sour.
Okay.
This one's a watermelon, as the name says, and then there's some sea salt. Got a little orange, lemon, and lime in there as well. It's pretty. Can't really go wrong. It's like I said, it's one of my favorite. Go to breweries. So just anything they make, I'm gonna snag if I haven't tried it yet. And this doesn't disappoint either. Pretty good drink there.
All right, we're gonna get that damn sponsorship yet.
Yeah, eventually, I'm just gonna keep pumping them out there. Maybe the thing about clever hashtag or something. But
There you go.
we'll definitely keep atting them.
Yeah, for sure. I pulled this one out. I bought this recently, and I have to say, I have to admit, the first time I drank this, I was kind of like, yeah, it's a swing and a miss. I'm gonna stick this one in the back of the fridge, and one day when you've had a few too many, try to get rid of a few of them.
Okay, down, yeah.
But I just poured another one, and it's a little bit better than it was at first taste. Still not my favorite, but anyways, this is a local brewery and a beer that kind of put them on the map. Obviously, Infusion Brewing Company. They're out of Omaha, and the Vanilla Bean Blonde is their kind of flagship, and then they do all kinds of the different variations of said beer. And this is one of those. I saw this and I thought, it's kind of intriguing. And I can see why maybe I didn't love it the most, after kind of thought about it some more. But it's the chocolate cherry vanilla bean blonde.
Hmm.
So it's got a little bit of kind of almost too much going on. There are too many different flavors kind of competing in that front. You get of course, chocolate and vanilla. Most people see those as polar opposites, anyways. But then you add the cherry in there. It's a little bit different. But I will say, yeah, I've poured it the second time. It's growing on me a little bit more. So at least I know I'll be able to dispose of them. But I will say, in their defense, they try a lot of different variations of it. I think just to have fun with it, and a lot of them are really, really good. They even have a festival every year they called Bean Fest when they bust out, a number of variations of it you can go try. And I've been a couple times to that, and that's a lot of fun. So yeah, it's good stuff. They just, obviously you try everything. Some of them aren't going to be of certain people's preference. That's for sure. Sometimes.
Well, I mean, if you don't shoot, you're not going to make it type thing. If you don't take a shot at it, who knows what's going to stick? Some of the, probably the more popular, beers or just anything in general comes to food or drink is maybe kind of thought of a long shot idea and ended up catching on and being popular. So, you know, but like you said, I haven't had that version of it, but the vanilla bean's definitely good. And a lot of the stuff they pump out's pretty good too.
Yeah, they make some good stuff, and it's a fun place if you haven't ever been out there in West O. I know they've got a couple of different things you can check out. As we dive into kind of what's going on in the sports world, we've got a couple of stories that we wanted to kind of throw in there. One of them more so just on a results type front that SJ will talk about with a boxing match that happened here over the weekend. And then also another big story that we had already talked about here on the program, and obviously it very much relates to what we talk about on the show, and that is sports wagering. And we kind of alluded to what was going on, or at least the investigation that had started a few weeks back with Jontay Porter out of the NBA. He's a former Missouri basketball player. Of course, some more folks know his brother, Michael Porter, who was a pretty good NBA player. But he got himself in some hot water because there ended up being some very odd bets that were rolling in on his player props, and most of them had to do with the unders. And conveniently in those games, he would exit the game pretty early to make that under hitting happen. And now that some of the more of the details have come out about what they were able to investigate, it's a dead on exactly kind of what it looked like type of thing. The smoke was there and the fire was there too, because it's exactly what he was doing. He was delivering information to others who were placing bets on him. He was also wagering on the NBA in general and himself. So he has received a lifetime ban from being involved in the NBA now, which you would expect. But this is kind of one of those landmark moments, really, just because we haven't seen this thing happen yet with this kind of direct proof and these direct results. And we kind of knew maybe this was coming once the sports wagering kind of got more prevalent and available to people. But this is definitely going to turn some heads.
Yeah, a few things with the story that just kind of got my attention. Obviously, we're both interested in the gambling world, so that's one thing there. And being an NBA fan was kind of why dug deeper into this deal. And it's just I mean, you understand people are going to do dumb stuff no matter what we're talking about. Of course, this instance we're talking about gambling, but it's just kind of the an attitude of a lot of it. Even when we were talking about maybe some of the college betting scandals that were out there, is just it's almost, I guess, just you can't really say it's ignorance, because how do you not think that they think someone's telling them they're watching them, but they're not really watching them, so they're going to get away with it? I guess I don't really know what goes to that thought process there, but it's kind of just like almost these days, not a lot of things kind of make you scratch your head, or we're not surprised by a lot just because of a lot of the stupidity that's out in the world is kind of I wouldn't say promoted, but it's it's passed through the news the way it is with social media and just online. You kind of hear about a lot of wacky stuff, the Florida man type stories and all that kind of wacky news. Like, we see it all the time, so we're kind of like, I guess we're just numb to it. So you just kind of read a little bit and click on, but just being more related to like what we're interested in, I kind of just looked a little deeper into this and just kind of just to put some numbers on it. I guess the one that really kind of, I guess, finally broke the straw that broke the camel's back in this situation was, I guess, a $80,000 parlay was bet, and that was paid out 1.1 million. I don't know what anybody would think that you're just going to get a $1 million robbery. Basically, any entity is just going to let you get away with that. So that's what I'm saying. Just I mean, I'm just this stupidity is the only way I know to describe these kind of actions. It's just kind of absurd in this situation. And in that game, I guess he played like 3 minutes on March 20th. Is, if I've got the dates correct here, the one I found is he only played 3 minutes and he said he was sick. So that makes it like even a little bit more like, it's one thing if you did have an injury, you pull a hammy back a couple weeks back and you can kind of say it's stiff on me or, tightened up or something. But just to say you're sick kind of, that's probably like, leading to the idea of maybe something not going on there. And I guess he also, that was with an associate's account, but in a previous time frame, like for what he was at the G League or whatever, just through like an associate doing it. And, I guess he bet like 54,000, just a little over that was like the amount, and ended up paying out 76 and change, like 76 and $59 to be exact. So he basically made like just under $22,000, and to risk. I mean, his career is over now, basically. So I guess I didn't get to the look at his contract or anything, but I'm assuming he was making more than $22,000 a year. So basically, risk your livelihood. I guess maybe you can go find a play overseas or become a coach somewhere. I don't know where because you're going to be blacklisted at least a little bit in the near future. So I mean, basically, my point is just like, was all this really worth $22,000? And not only that, you're kind of, just the laughing stock of the league right now.
Risk reward obviously is one thing that comes into play and makes you scratch your head in this situation. But I did see it does have details in the story that his latest two-way contract that he signed with the Raptors was worth $415,000. So it's not like
A little bit more.
yeah, he's not hurting. Like, I mean, I realize some of those G League guys aren't making a whole lot. I mean, if they don't get the two-way deal, they're not making hardly anything. But this isn't that situation. He actually played.
Also, not a guarantee we get that, but still, like, I mean, as long as you just, you're kind of not a total freaking asshole and you kind of do what you're supposed to do and show up to work, you're going to probably be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we know it's just people do dumb shit, like I said, no matter what it is. It just how this one kind of correlates to what we're interested in, how how it played out it was like I said, just kind of like mind blowing. Even with the crap that we see online every day, it was still kind of one of those you're like, I read that again, or like, did this actually happen the way that it's being reported? Just being in a journalism type of role, and just that's my training, and you as well. I always, get at least a couple, 3 sources and make sure it kind of lines up there. And this was one I almost had to go 4 or 5 deep just to be like, okay, is this like actually what happened? And it was. So, yeah, interesting individual to say the least.
Yeah, and obviously they're still kind of diving into the broader ramifications of this because there were maybe other wagers that were involved, in some way, some form that could be affected by this. So it's not just, that's the other part of it too. You get caught up in your own ideas of what you're going to affect in the game, and then you don't really realize that this maybe is affecting a lot more than that too. So you could get yourself caught up in a whole another deal, and that's obviously from a just a sports gambling viewpoint. Anybody that was wagering on those games, now are those games considered compromised? That's
right. Yes, it'll be a void deal for other things just beyond that. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
That's a hell of a question. Then I know there was some. Just of course, it's the obvious question: is it too severe of a penalty? A lot when you hear a lifetime ban, it's kind of like it. That also kind of makes you double stops you in your tracks and kind of whoa, that's it's pretty serious. But honestly, we're obviously pro gambling in the legal ways and using your brain and not letting it get over out of control. But at the same time, I think in this case, I'm kind of for it, I suppose, in the fact that it sets a precedence where kind of we can put an end to it before it even really gets going that way, because there's been a few here or there smaller issues and things coming up and throughout pro sports with Ohtani at the Dodgers. Who knows what that deal is if we ever get the truth on that story. But either way, I do think it's it's harsh, maybe over the top to some people, but I mean when you're messing with like not even just the gambling aspects, but the teams, the players, that's their livelihood. That's how they actually make legitimate money. You start messing with that, I think it's just in this case to, prove a point and say, this crap can't happen. I think that's the way to go about it, especially when you think not long ago is the referee, Tim Donaghy had that whole scandal there too. So I think it was the right move.
You talk about lifetime bans, like you said, that usually turns heads. I mean, obviously, this isn't a player of the caliber of Pete Rose, but it's still like you said, setting a precedent that moving forward, we're not going to allow any of this stuff to happen. And as you mentioned, some of those other guys on the floor, they might give a shit that they actually win the game. They might actually care about their job. So that's different too. You're affecting other people in that way, just around you. The thing that they kind of said was, even something that they look further into as far as the, gambling aspect of it was he wasn't listed on a pregame injury report for either of those 2 games that ended up having the, discrepancies with him taking himself out of the game. So yeah, that's even further, makes it more suspicious and makes it look bad from a gambling, type perspective, because obviously that's what people have to do now. If they're really serious deep into that kind of stuff, player props, they're going to be sure that guy's going to be out there on the floor. So they're looking at those things now. And that's the difference too. I guess we haven't talked a whole ton about that. We've alluded to it a little bit, but that's what's trickled down now here to the collegiate game too, because we were always used to this at the professional level of an injury report being out there and kind of have an idea of who's going to be, in the playing field or whatever it may be. And now in college, that's probably going to have to become a more regular thing as well, because if you're going to be wagering on those games, whether it's not just results or player props, I know they want to do away with that part of it, but you got to know who's out there if going to predict who's going to win the game. So that's also something that's going to, I think, change down the road.
Yeah, I know the Big Ten did a little bit of, I call it player participation, something to the effect. It wasn't quite, and they started, I think it was just this year, maybe the year before. But I mean, it wasn't an NCAA mandated thing. It was more something they just did within the conference to maybe kind of to have a little bit of a, I guess a guardrail out there for that type of thing. But yeah, I think it's going to have to expand and probably do so sooner than later. I know a lot of times you aren't even able to get a lot of action even just on props in college in general. But the way it's going, the business is still booming regardless of what these scandals are happening. Or I mean, they're more isolated incidents, even though it does catch your mind. So it's moving towards that direction, and probably seeing a little bit more prop action at the collegiate level, I'd assume.
Yeah, it is interesting to see how this kind of further develops down the road. I know that. It said in the story that he hasn't come out and publicly said anything yet. Obviously, probably doesn't have a whole lot to say. It's pretty obvious what's going on here. And unfortunately, then his brother gets caught up in it too, whether or not he knew anything about it or being involved, and that sucks for him. But if there is kind of more that gets leaked out later on and further details, or kind of gives us an insight into how maybe they caught some of this stuff too, that will be interesting down the road. So I'm sure that's not the final thing that we'll hear about that story in general. But it definitely, like you said, is setting a pretty good precedent here moving forward. And I think hopefully does stem some of that from happening in other sports as we move on.
Well, I mean, as like you said, we're supportive of doing it the right way and within reason. But the kind of, I mean, it affects us playing, making plays and doing that type of thing when players do this. So honestly, it kind of that's the type of stuff that would piss me off if something I played on and some, jackass is messing with the line or just not playing or not even, giving any type of effort. So, we see a lot of the, kind of, it's been a popular thing lately, I guess, for players to, kind of comment back when people, blame them for a bet and stuff. And I mean, you're better off just leaving it alone. But that I'm not saying I don't have that same type of, I'm not, message them or anything like that. But I mean, I get where people are frustrated if somebody, doesn't play or pulls out. And when you're doing something like this intentionally, that's even the higher level. Because I get it if somebody gets hurt or just has a bad game. But when you're knowingly, kind of affecting the game like this, it's as someone that enjoys, making a play here and there, that's something I would be, I'm obviously against that part of it.
Yeah, and it's going to ruffle a lot of feathers if that kind of stuff starts to become, a thing that happens regularly, or we're noticing it. Obviously, there's already been all that kind of, ruffling going on throughout the NBA for a long time with guys, choosing not to play sometimes and that type of thing. So, this is a whole nother layer to that. So we'll keep our eye on those types of stories. If we see anything else, obviously we'll bring that stuff up because, like we said, there's a lot of what we talk about here. So it does really affect what's going on. Moving on to some actual sporting activity that happened here over the weekend. SJ, I know you were pretty interested in a fight here this weekend, and it looked like it turned out to be a pretty darn entertaining one as well, and maybe a lot of folks had some fun with that one.
Yeah, for sure. I guess you call it. I don't know if I'm trying to recall. Kind of call back to an old fight. Kind of I wouldn't go Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson that far, but it was definitely kind of one of those long shots. Of course, we're speaking of Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia. Basically, the deal here, and I lost on this bet. I picked the wrong side, but honestly, I enjoyed every second of it, and I'll kind of detail why. Like, of course, we don't like losing. We say that all the time, and winning's more fun, and obviously, we're trying to make some money. But in this case, it's kind of one of those like perfect marriages where you lost the bet maybe, but the event, the sport itself was like enough to kind of like put that pissed off feeling to the side, and you could kind of just enjoy the actual,
Hmm.
the competition. So that was where I was at. But basically, kind of just kind of wrap, do a little synopsis here of like the build up. Basically, like Ryan Garcia had kind of been, basically going off the deep end, kind of just acting like he was just partying all the time, and just, posting crazy stuff about, like Illuminati type stuff, and kind of basically like a right wing type of, just going crazy and just all kinds of. So that makes you think, obviously you're not focused on a fight, and you're fighting
Hmm.
one of the, what thought was, and I still think you could probably put him up there, one of the, top 4 or 5 within his, weight class easily. So if you're not focused on training for the fight, something bad's likely going to happen, and that's what was, the general consensus was he was going to get, if not, maybe not knocked out, but he was going to get beaten fairly badly. The thing that kind of played in his factor, and I've honestly never been like I wouldn't say a huge fan of either of the fighters, but I was probably a little less sold on Haney. I did pick him though, and that was more of the fact that I thought Garcia was just kind of going off the deep end, and
Hmm.
he was coming off a pretty. I mean, he snuck a win in there, but his last big fight against Tank Davis, he kind of left it all out there. Didn't really give a kind of, when the lights were bright, he kind of came up short. There's top issues with weight, and what weight you drop down to in rehydration clauses. So maybe that was more. There was more there to it after this performance, but so I was just, I might have gone Garcia if he'd been kind of seen him of sound mind, but he came last night. I ended up getting 3 knockdowns. Got the decision at a couple points. It looked like he was going to get the stoppage. I think the last that by decision had to at least plus 1,000. I see as high as plus 1,400 to win by decision. So that shows you how much of a long shot he was. And I think by knockout was somewhere in the 700-800 somewhere, depending on when you played it and where you played it at. I mean, that was kind of his course to victory. He's one of those guys that's like kind of a he's got speed and quickness, so it's kind of like punch you don't see coming is kind of where his power comes from. But ended up working, pretty much dominated the whole fight. Of course, one of the judges scores it a draw, so that's the first score that's red, and you're like, ah, crap, are they going to screw him over?
Hmm.
Because he honestly, and there's no, I'll sometimes you go back and rewatch it, so maybe I need to do that. But on first glance, watching the whole fight from round 1 to round 12, there's no way he lost that fight. At times, about the 5th or 6th round, it looked like he was kind of, Haney was kind of settling in and was maybe going to take over. But does that left hook is just, I mean, it comes, you ready for it, it's coming and it still hits you. That's how good it is. So that was kind of the story of the fight. They loved it. But he even knocked him down with a right hand too. So he kind of just had his number that night, and really impressive performance. But like I said, it was kind of one of those things where 95% of people, maybe even higher, thought he had no chance, and that's why I thought it was amazing. That was the intrigue for me. Like I was wrong too. I missed on that one, but like I love that shit when someone's kind of just kind of tells the doubters that the hell with you, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
kind of come out. And I wish honestly he would maybe kind of use this as a way to get focused and kind of turn his career around a little bit. Obviously, he's not in a big bad spot or big trouble. He's only had like one loss. So, but as far as mentally and that type of
Hmm.
thing, because he's kind of been out there, and he's even been someone that's talked about having like depression issues and things like
Hmm.
that. So hopefully, maybe this can kind of get him going and be some part of motivation to kind of turn things around, and maybe have a he could have a hell of a career if he just kind of gets focused and kind of puts on those type of performances. Because basically, I mean, his trolling is how the way they said it. He was just trolling the whole camp, and I don't know if that's exactly true. Like he did win the fight, there's no denying that, but I think he may still have some issues that need to be cleared up. At least outside of the ring, definitely some things that need to be addressed. But it's a hell of a fight, and anybody that didn't see it, recommend just checking it out. Even if it's one of those, if you know the outcome, it's still going to be fun to watch just because there's so much excitement and drama. And it was a great fight, and those are the kind of more of those matchups need to be made, and in all combat sports. Just enough of this, playing games and demanding this or demanding that. Like
Hmm.
just get in the ring and settle it, because at the end of the day, you're still making a lot of money, whether it's 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, what have you. So the more fights you make, the more money you're going to make. So let's get those big fights done and get those big names in the ring together.
Yeah, I did see an infographic the other day that I thought was interesting. That boxing, as far as Americans' interest is still relatively high up there on the list of sports, that people pay attention to, which,
Right.
may be surprising to some people because I think, there are some that kind of just, it's a forgotten thing, of the, they had the heyday with some of the big names, and that's kind of, maybe fallen off a little bit for them. But yeah, it's still obviously very, very, very popular. And like you said, if you get stuff like that going on and great fights, then that's going to draw people to it once again.
Let's say that's a different discussion, but we could definitely, get into that sometime. And a lot of it's the access too. So I'd love to have a little bit more, not necessarily, a free fight here or there, but just a little bit less than $90. And it's still true that and American heavyweight can change everything just like that. That's the division that kind of always makes I don't necessarily love heavyweight as like a true, as a boxing fan. I don't mind it. I'm definitely more about, between the, 135 to 150 so range. That's kind of my sweet spot. But either way, like I'm good watching any fight. But I think that's kind of, like I said, it's another discussion for another day. And get rid of this celebrity, these YouTube boxers, and just have a little bit more access. And I think it could go a long ways.
That's true. Yeah. If Tyson Fury is an American, maybe that's a different story. That kind of drew a lot of attention there. Obviously, a lot of people I think know his name, even if they're still here in the country, in the States. But the other thing I was going to mention too, I guess if there's one sport where maybe you have lost a little bit of your sanity and can still have some success, that might be one.
That was the point brought up too. Is like, so a lot of people are saying, well, that's crazy, works well, and in the fight game, and that is true. As long as you get to the ring for fight night, that's fine. Because there's been plenty of. I mean, you think about it, I'd even maybe throw football in the mix here a little bit, not too much, but you got to be a little crazy to to do some of these. Part of you is kind of not. I don't want to say not normal because that sounds bad, but I don't know if you kind of get what I'm saying. It's not everybody could sign up for doing something like that as a full-time job. You know what I mean? There's a lot of risk and can be a lot of reward, but there's also sometimes not. And it's a hard life to live. So I definitely have to be a little bit crazy to do it in my book. But I mean, we'll watch it.
Yeah. I think it does go hand in hand a little bit. You have to have still some of that kind of, strategy and stuff in mind too. You can't just go out there and swing like crazy. It doesn't work for most people. But maybe one sport where it works a little bit. Now the other side of that too is, the guy's talking about, maybe alluding to the fact that he does have, admitting he has some mental issues. Well, that also relates to the fact that your head's getting pounded around a lot too. Who knows? I mean, that's been a big discussion in football and the fight game as well, because what are the ramifications of what we're doing to ourselves when we do participate in these things? So we've seen it with a number of guys now, for sure.
Yeah, and I know. I think his fight was in Brooklyn, the Barclays Center. So the New York State Athletic Commission was kind of obviously the ones in charge of that. And I know initially there was talk of a mental health check, but I guess by the bylaws and just the type of contracts that these fighters sign with state commissions and there's a bit of overreach, I guess, basically to sum it up. So that's not it was kind of almost like not, I wouldn't want to say like laughed at, but it was almost like kind of like, you can't do that, type of thing. And I was like, well, I mean, I've never, dealt with state commissions or anything like that, but I would have thought that was something that was a little bit more standard, considering, it's a dangerous game, like we said, but it was more just kind of like, no, that's doing way too much there. So apparently that's just clearing somebody to actually, be in a fight or, giving them the medical go ahead.
Interesting. So that's cool that was a good event, and we'll see if like more of those things do come about and draw people back, gain a little bit more popularity there as well. Speaking of popularity, one of the sports that is still very popular here in the States, and it's probably climbed the chart I saw, and I don't know if this is even factual or not because it just throwing out numbers, but it said, obviously the NFL was number one, and we all know that has been the case for a long time here in the States. A lot of people love football, and that's kind of the pinnacle of football. Now, I think you and I are kind of both on the level of we love the college game maybe a little bit more, but understand why the attention is there on the NFL. And then the next one on the list now here in the States, they had listed as the NBA, which, doesn't necessarily shock me, I guess, but, that would be a change from the past. It's jumped ahead of baseball and the MLB, and I think that probably is true just from a, kind of outside look at what's gone on in the sports world. And, you see what people are interested in nowadays and how games change and what they're trying to do to grow different sports. And baseball has long had a problem with certain things, whether it be time commitment, whether it be accessibility, just like we just talked about with the boxing stuff. And that's something they did themselves. So, I live in a state where there's, 6 teams that I can't watch because I'm in a blackout region, and they're all, obviously the ones that are closest to me, but none of them are in my state. So, yeah, it's stuff that just doesn't make any sense, and they've done that to themselves over time. So I'm not surprised. But I do think that the game of basketball in general has just kind of grown a little bit. I see it just, even on a local level. It's interesting here in our town. We've got a pretty big immigrant population of folks that will come from an island, and they seem to really be drawn just to the game. There's a court here close to my house, and a lot of nights they'll gather up and they're all playing and they're all just, shooting around, having a good time. And I think it's because it's such an accessible, easy sport. If you get, a couple of hoops up for somewhere, it's easy thing to do. All you need is the ball. Like, it's not a thing that's hard to come by. And that obviously that's why soccer worldwide is a huge thing, because it's so easy to, here make some areas where you kick a ball through. That's pretty easy to figure out. Yeah, I just think that the game of basketball itself has grown some worldwide attention for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned just the access is kind of always a big thing. Just all you need is a ball and a hoop, and sometimes you don't even need a hoop.
Mm-hmm.
Just the ball's good enough. Do a little dribbling in the driveway or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
That was always fun coming up to doing stuff like that. But and there's also a big, when you talk about the NBA in particular, but even the college game you see it a lot too. There's a pretty sizable international flair to almost every league. So, you can find a correlation somewhere, somebody, from a country you're from or somewhere you've been or that type of thing kind of makes it easy. And just seeing like a lot of, I guess, just quality in the game, I think has changed. We hit a little bit of a lull there, I think maybe, 5 or 6 years ago, where it was just kind of the game there's a lot of things that were lacking, one way or the other. And I think I do think opening it up and, it's no matter what people say, like, oh yeah, I love defense, but then when you get those 7-3 football games or there's 55-50 basketball games, then everyone's complaining. So people don't really like defenses to believe they do, and I get maybe they've gone a little bit, in the NBA in particular, maybe a little bit too offensive heavy and kind of handcuff the defense a little bit. But at the end of the day, points is people want to see people score. Even you look at here in Kansas City, like the soccer is kind of blowing up. They built the stadium for the women's team, and the Sporting KC has always been really strong too. And those leagues, they score goals, and that's especially with American fans. If you're not scoring, in soccer and then just in sports in general, if you're not scoring points, you're gonna lose the audience there real quick. So I think access is obviously number one, and then just everything after that, especially when it comes to getting someone entertained. You got to have action. You got to have something to really draw the audience in. I think offense is that when it comes to basketball, at least.
Yeah. I guess from my perspective, it's always been like what draws me is scoring and scoring chances. At least if there's chances, then it makes the game that much more interesting.
They don't want the old school, no shot clock, passing the ball around for 50 seconds and then, making a layup just because the other team's got better players than you. That's not the type of game we want to watch. I know that.
Yeah. And I guess for me, that's one of the reasons why I did come to kind of enjoy watching hockey, is just because, yeah, there may not be a lot of scoring sometimes, but there are a lot of scoring chances. Like there's shots on goal that are up into the 50s, 60s sometimes in games, depending on who's playing. So that is a different story to me than never having that opportunity.
Well, in hockey, like soccer too, like the action doesn't stop. That's
Yeah.
one thing I enjoy about both of those sports. Like I get, you got to have breaks here and there, so that's something I can get into with both of those.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I kind of bring that up is because obviously for both of the sports we just kind of touched on, basketball and hockey, they're now into the postseason. So basketball has been going for a little bit. Of course, they've got this whole play-in tournament thing that happens now, and I don't really understand.
I mean, I even like watch pretty regularly, and sometimes I'm like can't remember exactly how it works, but we're good now. I get the it made sense when it was the COVID year and that type of thing, when it was a little bit like trickier to kind of work around travel and everyone's in the bubble and all that stuff. But of course, they made money off it, so they wanted to just go back to 8 teams and call it a day.
Yeah, I agree. It's confusing for the casual fan for sure. I don't understand what's going on, but yeah, we're into the series now, and it started here over the weekend. And just to kind of touch on what's going on, the Cavaliers and the Magic are in an opening round series along with the T-Wolves and the Suns, Knicks and the 76ers, Lakers and the Nuggets. And then as of here today, there is, as we're recording, a game in progress between the Thunder and the Pelicans. The Celtics and the Heat are in a series. And then the Bucks and the Pacers also in a series. And then did I mention the Clippers and the Mavericks also as well. So those are all the series that we've got going on.
Yeah, we got the unders on that Pacers Bucks, so I just need that Pelicans Thunder to hit the overs, and we'll be good for tonight. We'll get some more plays out this week, but yeah, went with a little total action tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Yeah, and that's obviously stuff that we can pay attention to here throughout the week and throw out there for you. So do follow us on Twitter there, or X, or whatever you want to call it, at Cherokee CP, at SJM Bets. Those are the handles, so you can find us there, and we'll make those plays as we kind of see them as we're going throughout. Just to give you an idea of what has happened here so far, the teams that won on Saturday were the Cavs, the T-Wolves, the Knicks, and the Nuggets. And then here today, winners were the Celtics, the Clippers, and the Bucks. And then obviously we don't know the result of the other one going on between the Pelicans and the Thunder. So that's what's going on there in the NBA. We'll continue to follow that. And yeah, if we see some stuff that is interesting, we'll throw it out there for you. One thing I did see a note on that was I thought was kind of funny, just because I normally don't enjoy New York teams of any nature. But they mentioned, so on Saturday, the Knicks got a win in their game against the 76ers. And then the Rangers also picked up a victory in the NHL playoffs. It's the first time that the two teams there from Madison Square Garden had won their opening round playoff game on the same day since like 1970 something. So it's been a long time coming.
Because, yeah, I mean, like lately, of course, I don't follow hockey as closely, but the Knicks have had a little bit of struggles. They're decent now the last 3 or 4 years, but they kind of hit a rough patch there. But just, I mean, going back to like, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they were always in it. And I know the Rangers have always been a pretty strong franchise as well. It's kind of amazing when you hear those stats, because you would have just assumed that that's had to have happened several times, but obviously it hasn't. But I mean, don't sleep on the Knicks this year. They got the 2 seed, and they might be making some noise here. We'll guess we'll find out in next week or so.
All right, Spike Lee will be jumping up and down out of his seat. Of course, the Stanley Cup playoffs going on, as we alluded to there, also started on Saturday. So, and usually that's how it aligns. The NBA, NHL usually have their playoffs going on at the same time. I was, of course, a little bit upset as we recorded last week. My Penguins were in contention there to get that last wild card spot and get into the playoffs. I'll give Sidney Crosby some credit. He made one hell of a push to try to get his boys in there. It's something else I'm going to touch on here in a second, but unfortunately they didn't make it. Capitals got the last spot, so they're in. And here's what's happened, or what the matchups are and what's happened so far there on that side in the hockey world. So the Hurricanes are one up on the Islanders from Saturday, and then the Bruins one up on the Maple Leafs from Saturday's action. Today, the Panthers go one up on their series against the Lightning. The Rangers did get the victory against the Capitals, and then the Jets were winners over the Avalanche. That's going to be an interesting series there. And then the Canucks and Predators are on the schedule for later on here tonight. And then the other ones that we haven't mentioned yet, the Golden Knights and the Stars have an opening round series, and then the Kings and the Oilers have an opening round series that'll get started tomorrow. So that is what is on the NHL Stanley Cup playoff circuit. Now, I do always, of course, like I said, I've become a hockey fan. I always have kind of viewed the Stanley Cup playoffs as one of those playoff runs that is just like one of the pinnacles of sports, just because it's so damn hard to win. These guys expend so much energy. They constantly get hit. They constantly get pucks bouncing off their, whatever throughout, and they getting rammed into walls. It's a tough sport to play, and for teams to get through it. And it's, of course, 7-game series. You're playing forever sometimes. It's a lot of work to get to the end of the road. And just how hard those guys play usually is what's fun to watch, and that's what makes it a good sport. I think it makes it entertaining from just even if you're just a casual fan to peek in on a few of those for me.
One thing that always stood out to me was almost like the 3-0 deficit wasn't the death sentence that it was like in the NBA. You've seen so many teams come back from 3-0 in hockey. It was almost like you're like, okay, now the series might be starting now once you get down 3-0. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing I always kind of was kind of marveled at. That was the fact that wasn't so like, oh God, we're screwed type of thing. It was almost like, let's get focused and kind of, make a run here. So that was one thing that was kind of stuck out to me. And I like, I don't know, maybe the schedule's changed, but my memory, at least, they're pretty good about playing every day, if not every other day. Mm-hmm. I do like that when it comes to playoffs. We get the TV stuff. We know what that we've worked in the business long enough, but it sucks to me when you got, a game and then you got 3 or 4 days off, especially when it comes to playoffs and later in the season. I don't know, when you're playing well, you want that. You want to kind of keep that momentum going. I guess on the opposite side, maybe if you're playing not so well, it gives you a day or two to recover. But either way, like, I don't know, I just kind of like that. I get maybe you can't play every day in every sport, but every other day, I think a day in between rest is enough. Maybe a travel day when you're going across the country. But these guys actually flying in, they're not flying on Southwest Airlines or anything like that. None of those JetBlues. They're traveling pretty nice there.
Yeah, it's a lot easier than it used to be. That's for sure. But yeah, and that, I guess that's another part of it too that is incredible though too, because I followed as I become a fan, you follow some of the people that are kind of behind the scenes too. And some of these guys that like do equipment stuff, it's just like, holy crap. The jobs that they have during these death runs is just like, oh my God. By the time it's over, I mean, you want your team to go as far as possible. And if you're hoisting that cup, you feel great about it. But man, you're going on, I'm probably going on one hell of a bender after that's over, because you just have to be stressed out to no end. That's a lot of time spent and put in.
Yeah, those are the type of smells that are probably just seared in your brain too. I can only imagine. I mean, a lot of the sports, I guess hockey, football, just those. That's got to be. That's. I'm sure overall it'd be a pretty fun gig at the end of the day.
Yeah. So a couple things I will note from that, and I haven't put anything out there obviously yet here on this stuff. I was a little bit, kind of just upset that my team wasn't involved initially, but now that I'm past that. I do see some pretty good opportunity in some of these first round series, because I do think. As much as I just want this to happen because I'm bitter about it, but I do think that the Rangers are going to easily get past the Capitals and sweep past that series. Rangers are pretty solid. Capitals just kind of did just enough to get themselves squeaked in there. So that's going to be, I think, one that pushes over pretty easy. And then the Hurricanes over the Islanders as well. Islanders haven't had the best end to the season. They were good for a while there, but they've been tailing off. Hurricanes are kind of getting stronger as things go on. And then the Bruins are just so damn tough. They're going to be pretty tough to beat. I know the Leafs are better than they have been in a long time, but I would say that advantage is pretty square on the Bruins in that series. So Going to be interesting. That Avalanche Jet series, if you're going to play overs ever in hockey, that's probably the one, because they even played some games late in the regular season and they were already scoring 7+ goals in those games late in the season. So that one's going to be a high scoring deal. It was 7-6 the other night, that first game of the series. So that would be one, if you're going to play the lots of scoring, then that's the one you want to keep an eye on for sure.
I don't know if you've heard, but Denver is a mile above sea level, so breaking news for you. So that does affect things with the altitude and your conditioning and all that. So just
there's less oxygen on that ice.
Yeah, there you go. See, you might. It sounds like you've heard of this before. It's just, every time it's a lot like with fights too, when they travel to like Denver, Utah. I mean, Mexico City's a little different because I think they're like 7,000 or 8,000. Like they're up there. Like the elevation's crazy, but one of those like kind of like the lazy man's news and notes type thing. It's just like I'll grab a hold of that, or like if you're you're in Florida or something, you say below at sea level or whatever. Just I don't know. It's one of those things that kind of pisses me off. I think we need to have a show one week, or just like all the shit that's just so annoying. Yeah, because we might, I don't know, we might break a record for our longest podcast if we do that. So.
That would take a while. We have to split it up into multiple episodes, probably. Speaking of which, this is not necessarily something, I guess, that totally horks me off, but it's a narrative I think that is annoying and interesting. So obviously the Penguins did not advance and make it into the Stanley Cup playoffs like I thought they were maybe going to do. But Sidney Crosby went on one hell of a tear at the end of the season, points wise, to kind of put the team on his back and make it happen, because they, for all intents and purposes, middle of the season, they were written off and probably should have been, because it just was not going well. Traded away a great player in Jake Guentzel. That was kind of the, bellwether thing for the fans. Yeah, okay, well, this season ain't going to work out probably, but he damn near did it. And I saw a statistic the other day, a graphic that they put up, and it was showing the year-by-year points per game total that Crosby has put up as he's gone through his career. And he has been at over a point per game every single season that he has played professional hockey, which if you don't watch the sport, maybe that doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot to you, but let's just say so a point is either going to be a goal or an assist, and he is putting up over one average per contest, so which is pretty hard to do, considering that sometimes you're 1-0 games, 2-0
yeah, exactly. We just talked about the lack of offense oftentimes in these sports that aren't attractive, so to put up numbers like that is real crazy. And he's been doing it for that's a body of work that not many people are going to match.
Yeah, the guy's 36 years old, and he's playing just as good as he ever has, in the sport. And we've seen that with some other guys, obviously defying age. That's become a thing. Guys take care of themselves and last longer. LeBron's certainly been one that's been a proof of that in the NBA game. Never would have happened before, but it's happening now. And yeah, Crosby doesn't show any signs that he's going to be done here anytime soon. I just the thing that kind of graphic brought up to me that I thought was interesting is you always get certain guys, obviously, that are polarizing. If they're good, they're going to be hated a lot, and they're going to be loved by certain factions. That's the way it goes. I get that. But for him, there's always been this faction of people and part of it too was because of the, I guess, aura that they put around him when he started. He had that expectation to begin with. Just
the
like
hype
LeBron.
that was there, yeah.
Yeah, it was there. But, and so a lot of people hate him for that. But at the end of the day, the guy's lived up to the damn billing. He's done it. He's done it his entire career, and I just don't understand why people continue sometimes to have that, oh, well, he's not as good as so-and-so, or he doesn't do this the right way, or he whines a lot about this. And like I get that with certain, you're always going to have that little bit if you don't like a player. But at the same time, some of these guys just need to be given the credit that they're due, because it's pretty incredible to put up that kind of number for that long.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always kind of tried to. Like, man, of course, come up short. Not nothing's 100% for no one's batting 1,000 or whatever. But there's plenty of athletes that I disdain and didn't care for based upon, but just what I've seen of them, I don't like them. But at the same time, you got to be able to respect their ability and their talent. So I think that's kind of it's not it's easy, it's not easy to do. It's a hard thing, but separating one from the other it's kind of just like separating the artist from the art type thing. That kind of discussion in my mind, at least. It's you may not like. Yeah, I don't like. I'm probably one of the few people that, as a huge basketball fan, I never liked Jordan. That is one. But obviously, you can't deny his greatness. So there's kind of like that thing there too. Like, so I guess that's where I would come at it from, is just be like, this. It's I don't know why it's so difficult, but it is to separate. I mean, just those and you guys you're talking about something where people have a lot of emotions invested, and oftentimes a lot of money spent to be a fan of a team. So maybe that's where it's tough to kind of separate those two discussions. But yeah, I think it's two very different things. But I'll agree that it's way easier said than done to kind of respect the athlete while maybe it's somebody you don't care for. And we've seen quite a few lately just kind of blow up and be you know it doesn't help either that it's good to have access like we talked about, but it's also not good to have access because everybody's got to try to use that athlete to promote their platform and get their following that much higher, and we're just getting all this filth to kind of fill the time. So go come to my website, go to this thing. I'm sure you saw the deal. I don't even want to get into it, but the dude Indianapolis that was being a creep or whatever with I was like, dude, seriously, like just stuff like that. It's just like it's nauseating to me, but that's the type of info we get because everybody thinks everything's fake news now and journalism's dead, and it's gonna die because of shit like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and I guess that's the other like little aspect of this too is when in his case and in some other guys' cases, they've been there. They've been available to the media. They've always been respectful. They haven't done a lot that's been bad. As much. I'm also of the same opinion like with LeBron. I don't really like the guy that much. I never really loved his career, just personally, but I respect the hell out of him, and he's never done those things. Like he's been available. He hasn't gotten a lot of trouble. Normally you see him doing good stuff. So it's hard to just say, oh yeah, that guy's an a-hole. Like it's not true. Like you may not like the just him in general or the aura he puts off when he's on the floor. But still, yeah, you have to show that respect. If you're a fan of an absolute 100% bitter rival of that team, yeah, right. Okay, I get it. But when it's not the case, and then when we've talked about this before too, but it just also I think filters into that whole we're so obsessed with the whole GOAT conversation nonsense.
Dude, every time somebody like freaking crosses the freaking street, you gotta be like, oh, he's the GOAT. No one's ever walked across the crosswalk like that. Like, good God. Like, yeah. It's obnoxious.
Yeah. I mean, all these guys are different. They play the game differently. So why are we trying to, make it a this versus this type of thing? Just appreciate the shit for what it is. And that's, I guess it was kind of my point. Why I get so frustrated when I hear that stuff all the time about him in particular is just, it rubs me the wrong way when that's always the narrative. Like, you just appreciate shit when you see it sometimes. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, no, we got there, and it's honestly, it's unfortunate, but it does seem like the further you get away from it, we remember things different. Everybody loves everybody after the fact, but and at the time that they were, on the court or on the field, what have you, they weren't exactly treated the way that we remember them being treated. We remember the good things, and I think that's just part of life.
I guess that feeds into the general human instinct too of nostalgia. We all love that. We're all gonna buy into what we thought was the the thing that we remember that was so great and cool, and we remember the good stuff and not necessarily maybe the bad too. But
yeah, I mean, it's being as parents, like we never did anything when we were kids. We were really good. We always did the right thing. So.
Yeah.
Someone might tell you different, but yeah.
Do as I do, not as I say. Yeah. How's that go? Yeah. So it's interesting. I don't know. I think there obviously will be those discussions and arguments that will go on till the end of time. But you get those situations with certain players, and I just think it's interesting when that kind of comes up over and over and over again. That's kind of what we had, I think, on the docket here this week here for you for the program. We certainly appreciate you tuning in and joining us. If you've got any arguments that you want to throw our way, if you think somebody's the GOAT, then tell me, and we'll talk about it on the show. But you can reach out to us, as we mentioned, on our social media platforms, at Cherokee CP, at SJM Bets. There on Twitter. Those are the easiest ways to follow us in, the quick fashion. A lot of times, of course, when we're going through major portions of the year, we're going to put graphics and other stuff up there for you as well. We share the program out there in those ways as well, just so you have easy access to it. And then, of course, we'd love it if you would share the pod wherever you may find it, whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon. If you are a YouTube person, we're in all those places, so you can find us wherever and be able to share us, give us reviews, or make comments. On the Spotify platform, we do usually put up a poll with the show as well, so you can answer that or give us some feedback. If you have a beer that you want us to try, or you have a topic you want us to discuss, throw it at us, and we are more than open to doing that. We're here just to have some fun, and hopefully you enjoy the BS that we bring here to you. So SJ, I'd say that's another solid week of ranting and raving about sports and wagering.
Yeah, and the good news is we got a good fight or two coming up in the next couple of weeks, and also that Derby. I know you like to play the ponies, might have to break out our finest blazer and maybe a hat or something to do a little bit of a special show that week.
We'll put on our Sunday best for the old Run for the Roses here coming up. Yeah, that's always fun. Even if you don't know half shit about it, it's you can look up some stuff and make a half-educated play, and it's always fun. So I look forward to that.
I'm sure we're not alone either. That was kind of one of the first things I ever kind of gambled on, so to speak, was playing the horses. Is kind of one of those things you kind of get you into the gambling world, especially when it wasn't accessible to do the sports betting and that type of thing as it is now. That was kind of the entry into the world. So I have fond memories of Fauner Park there, and
yeah. I got my Exarban days under my belt with the grandparents. So yep, good stuff. And that's obviously those are still very viable options to go have some fun. So we'll get into that here as we move down the road to Triple Crown, scenario. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us once again here for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time here for some more covers.